Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
And good morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics on this Sunday. We start by talking inflation and the economy this week. This week, federal officials reveal that inflation in January was 7.5%, the highest level of inflation in 40 years. Indiana Senator Todd Young's office says the rising cost on nearly all goods and services is costing the average American family about $276 every month.
Rampant inflation and soaring prices are crushing the American people. Experts had predicted another red-hot inflation report, around 7%. Even that alone would have meant we were still trapped inside the worst inflation in 40 years. But reality turned out to be even worse than that.
This inflation is real. It's harming people. It's 7.5%. That's a tax. And it continues to increase. It's not decreasing. So the feds have to step up to the plate and do something. The administration has to do. We all have to work together right now to get our financial house in order. If not, it's going to be absolutely horrible what it's going to do to the American economy.
Meanwhile, the White House is touting that the economy added 6.6 million jobs in President Biden's first year in Indiana. State leaders say Indiana's economy gained 82,400 jobs in 2021. The state's Democrats are hitting the road again, touring the state to credit the Biden administration's American Rescue Plan as the main reason for the jobs explosion.
This legislation literally pulled us back from the brink during some of our darkest days in the midst of a global pandemic.
During Governor Holcomb's State of the State address last month, he portrayed the state as having a rosy future, that now and in the future our economy will be thriving. He said Hoosier families had better days ahead. But what he didn't say is that Indiana's bright economic future is due largely to Democratic support. The America Rescue Plan is fully funding the ready $500 million investments in our state. So these $500 million will go to communities because Hoosier Democrats did the hard work of making it happen.
And let's welcome in Democratic Representative Carrie Hamilton. Carrie, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Phil. Thank you.
The party, as you very well know, starting another big push to talk about jobs and crediting it to the administration. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm excited to be part of the Democratic Party's job tour because there's federal support that's come to Indiana that Democrats supported on Capitol Hill. Indiana Republicans in the congressional delegation did not support it. So when we think about last month, Governor Holcomb gave a State of the State and he talked about the rosy future for Indiana's economy. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But what I didn't hear was that was really a bipartisan effort, both the Democrats on Capitol Hill making sure that money came to Indiana, and then at the State House, many of the priorities that we've been fighting for, that I've been fighting for 6 years, were included earlier this year in the state 2-year budget because of that federal support. So
you do give Governor Holcomb some of the credit?
Well, sure. I mean, it's bipartisan, right? But this was the first time in a very long time that the budget received that bipartisan support. And that is because we were able to make some prudent, smart, kitchen table investments that we really need to make for Hoosiers, thanks to Democrats on Capitol Hill, frankly.
That being said, inflation through the roof. We get that report this week, 7.5% in January, the highest in 40 years. I mean, when you're talking about inflation being that high, does it really make up for the inflation when jobs are up? I mean, something's just not adding up.
Sure. Well, a great question. A couple of thoughts to that. First of all, we know that inflation is actually a global issue. This is happening all over the planet and in countries everywhere. So it's a big issue that's being addressed in different ways. I would say two things. One, the Jobs Act, it's bringing lots of really good paying jobs to Indiana for construction and also helping us pay teachers a better living wage. That will help ease the pain of this near-term inflation. And then long-term, certainly in Washington, we're seeing several proposals and actions moving forward to address inflation. That's coming from Democrats. I'm not seeing a whole lot of solutions from across the aisle.
But you know what the other side's going to say? They're going to say the reason why we have such high inflation is because of what Democrats did last year.
Well, okay, Democrats on Capitol Hill didn't fund every country on the planet, and everyone's dealing with inflation. So we know there's supply chain issues, right? We're coming up with solutions to the supply chain issue as best we can in the United States. That, again, is coming from Capitol Hill Democrats. It's not as simple as saying that the spending that's helped so many people in our state already and will continue to help strengthen our state is causing inflation. That's just, there's not a strong connection there.
Okay, I think some economists would disagree. However, let's move on stateside here. Your message to Republicans in the state that are pushing bills like banning transgender females from playing girls' sports and also CRT.
Well, I would just say, I don't think Hoosiers really want us to spend our precious time at the State House on these divisive social issues. Very, very divisive culture wars, really. I want to talk about what we've been able to do this year because of that money coming to our state. I want to talk about the $1 billion that we were able to backfill for public education after years of taking money out of that system so that our teachers might decide to stay. Phil, I've been knocking on doors in my district for 6 years. And from day one, I met teachers who were getting out of the profession, teachers who loved what they did because they just couldn't financially stay in the field.
Yeah.
And we're starting to turn that because of this money that we've received from Democrats. And so that's really exciting for our state moving forward, trying to keep teachers in the classroom, keep our schools strong with support for our schools. And of course, ultimately helping our students thrive in our state. I want to talk about the $500 million in READY grants, completely funded by federal dollars. This is money that will go into communities, regions across the state to strengthen our communities with local economic development projects, quality of life projects, job creation opportunities, really exciting investments. 100% due to federal money coming from Democrats. Also, I just have to mention, Phil, the broadband investment. We have a $350 million broadband investment coming both from the America Rescue Plan and the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Again, not a single Republican from Indiana voted for those bills, but that money will fund essential investments to connect our communities and our people to opportunity in every corner of the state.
Let me jump in one more question before I let you go because we're running out of time. Democrats came into this session putting a priority on legalizing cannabis. That hasn't garnered much attention. If not now, then when, in your opinion?
Well, I hope sooner rather than later. I think it's a smart change that we need to make as a state. Catch up with our neighboring states, bring in some revenue, regulate the industry, make it make sense for Hoosiers. Certainly keep it away from anyone under 21, et cetera. Make it make sense for our state and our economy.
Yeah. Democratic State Representative Carrie Hamilton, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Phil.
All right, coming up, the Indiana Speaker of the House resigns from his job with the College Board during the heated debate over what can be taught in Indiana's classrooms. He explains the decision next on All Indiana Politics. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics on this Sunday as we turn to the Speaker of the Indiana House. Republican Todd Houston stepped down from his position with the College Board this week. That's the company that does SAT tests and AP courses. His decision came amid growing national scrutiny of his role in pushing a bill to limit Indiana classroom curriculums on topics including race. News 8's Garrett Berquist was among the reporters who questioned Houston about his decision.
House Speaker Todd Houston had been a senior vice president with the College Board since October of 2012. He focused on K-12 education policy. He resigned that position last week amid scrutiny over his role in the school curriculum bill that's currently making its way through the legislature. It's worth noting that the College Board, among other things, provides course material for advanced placement courses that are available in many high schools. Houston says his departure had nothing to do with that scrutiny.
Mr. Speaker, you stepped down from the College Board this week. What role was there any interplay between your role there and your work on House Bill 1134?
No, first of all, let me say I am so grateful and thankful for my experience at the College Board and the incredible support. It was funny, over the last couple years, I've been extraordinarily supportive, but this job is taken up and takes a tremendous amount of time. And the first half of the session was tough. It was long and tiring. And matter of fact, I think a couple of you asked me a week ago, Tuesday, you look tired. You look and there was no that was not. I wasn't hiding it very well, to be honest with you. So at that point, I knew I needed to make this decision. They were extraordinarily supportive of me. It's an awesome organization filled with amazing people, and it was just the right time.
Do you wish you had left the College Board sooner?
Well, timing is, no, because I love the people, and I love the work. I love the people and what they do. So I feel great about my experience, and I am the most grateful and thankful person ever.
So it's just a coincidence that days after you were getting negative publicity on your involvement with some of these education bills that you resigned with no notice?
I felt, well, again, there were a lot of conversations. Again, I felt nothing but support and just beyond grateful and thankful. So, but I was ready to move on. This is going to be an intense, you guys know it. I mean, you guys know what the first half looked like and what we're going to have. These short sessions are intense, they're time consuming, and I just wanted to have that opportunity to focus on this, catch my breath pro-session, and look forward to kind of having a little bit of a break.
The Indiana Democratic Party released a statement shortly after Houston's departure from the College Board. It reads in part, "Speaker Todd Houston is a walking conflict of interest. And while him parting ways from the College Board is good for education overall, House Bill 1134 is still alive and risks putting Indiana's teacher shortage in overdrive. The Indiana GOP is cementing itself as the culture war party, and they would rather divide communities than create a better future for Hoosier families." At the State House, Garrett Bergquist, Wish TV, wishtv.com, and follow us on Facebook.
All right, coming up, the Indiana bill that targets transgender high school athletes, and Mike Pence speaking out against Donald Trump in the 2020 election. We talk both next on All Indiana Politics. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back Tom John, former Marion County Republican Party chairman, and Kip Tu, former chairman of the Indiana Democratic Party. Gentlemen, good to see you. We saw more fireworks, as you guys know, this week about the bill that would prohibit transgender girls from taking part in girls' school sports here in Indiana. Kip, we'll start with you this Sunday. Can Democrats bolster enough public support to kill that bill?
Well, I hope so. And I want to say a couple things about it if I can. We've got a lot of important things going on in the state of Indiana, a lot of issues. There's a bill in the Senate right now that would try to help bicyclists who are being hit and maimed by cars, and hundreds of them across the state. I think there's been one transgender issue in 60,000 students across the state of Indiana. The fact that we're wasting time for something like this in a short session is beyond me. And all it really is doing is hurting transgender children. It's not helping girls' sports. It's not preserving girls' sports. It's just hurting the most vulnerable people in our society. And we really ought to just throw it in the trash bin. It's really divisive and hurtful.
Tom, is it a waste of time?
Well, this is a complicated issue, and honestly, it's one that's not even purely partisan in what it is. There are people from a variety of places that have concerns, and we can take a position whether they're legitimate or not legitimate concerns, but nonetheless, anytime we have these debates, you have to discuss what the policy is. Personally, I'd rather not be discussing it, but that's part of a legislature. You're going to have these policy debates come up, and if legislators feel from their voters that they need to, unfortunately, they'll go up there, and that's why we have to have people who express their opinions to the bodies, and then the results will be what they may.
But Tom, don't you think we already have a governing body that can handle this, the IHSAA? I mean, that's what they're there for. It's the Indiana High School Sports Athletic, or whatever it stands for. Yeah. That's what it's there to do, is to regulate sports at the high school level. It just seems absurd to me that the legislature is getting involved in something that really doesn't affect the entire state of Indiana in any way.
I agree with you, Kip, but then again, I've seen legislation about class basketball.
Well, that's totally different.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll keep an eye on it and see what happens, guys. I want to turn the next topic over to some of the extraordinary events that happened over the past 10 days involving Mike Pence and Donald Trump. I know you guys have been keeping an eye on this one as well. The former vice president says that Trump is wrong when he says Pence could have overturned the 2020 election. Tom, are you surprised to hear that? And also, does this maybe set up a battle for 2024?
I absolutely, I think what this has shown is what we all knew in Indiana, which is that Mike Pence is a man of integrity and he's not going to bow to anybody who's wrong. And it's absolutely clear that what he did on January 6th was the right thing to do, that he couldn't overturn the election. And history is proving out how important he's been as a stabilizing force of the last several years for our country. And I think this positions him well as the adult in the room in a country right now where people can't talk, people can't get to the issues, to be a man who can step up and actually have a discourse and be a legitimate candidate and somebody who will be a real contender in the presidential race.
Kip, what was your take on this?
I think there's some polling that supports the position that Mike Pence took, and that's why he took it most likely. And I'm glad to see it. I think it was the minimal thing someone could do in the position that he had. Yeah, he could have attempted to break the law and gone down as an insurrectionist with the rest of us. But I guess we should pat him on the back for doing what the right thing was. To me, it was a no-brainer, and he said it was a no-brainer. So it was. Now, from the politics of the future, both parties are having quite a struggle, but the Republican Party is just on a level completely different from the Democratic Party when it comes to this. You either have to be all Trump or nothing these days. Pence deciding not to be all Trump is a pretty bold move in the party, I suppose. We'll see how far it takes. There's even one person, I think, this week who went to Trump Tower. She didn't get the endorsement. She went to Trump Tower to beg.
Yeah.
It's just pathetic.
Tom, so is that true? Do you have to be all Trump or nothing in the Republican Party these days?
No, I don't think it is true. I think you have obviously some people who are very big supporters of our former president. But you look at the Virginia governor's race, that was not really a Trump-centric race by any stretch. It was a policy race, and it was one that the Republican one Youngkin won going away. So I think that's overplayed, and it's overplayed for certain people's purposes. And I think the good leaders will ultimately win elections, and you have people that have their opinions, and you have to have big tents if you're going to have political parties. And so you'll have people in the Republican Party that are Trump supporters, but you'll have others that just want to see good policy, and then you'll have some that are both.
Well, speaking of policy, let's talk the economy real quick. I have about less than 2 minutes left. Specifically inflation. Kip, I'll come to you on this one. I lean heavily on my wife when it comes to politics. She's pretty apolitical, okay? So I kind of watch her. She's obviously a suburban wife, a suburban mom. Okay, so when the inflation topic comes up, she went grocery shopping and she came back with a lot of choice words. So going forward, how are Democrats going to I guess, argue against the fact that inflation isn't on them come midterm elections?
Well, the politics of it for Democrats at the moment aren't great, mostly because we have the presidency and the House and the Senate, of course. And so it falls on us, even though it isn't our fault. No one is blaming defense spending for inflation, although we had a huge increase in defense spending. It's global issues that are causing inflation. It's supply chain. It doesn't have hardly anything to do with what the decisions are being made in the House and the Senate in the president's office. It does have something to do with what the Fed's doing.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you saw, or that Manchin was talking about the Fed's got to try to do something. The White House is going to do what they can do, but it's beyond the White House in a lot of ways.
It is on them. Tom, real quick, 20 seconds left. Take us home.
Well, the bottom line is that there's a lot of spending and attempted spending in Washington, D.C. The only way you pay for that is printing money. And the Fed doesn't have much choice in that when we're running the debt up. Right. And that is going to drive inflation.
We'll see what happens. Gentlemen, always good to see you. Have a good rest of your weekend. We'll be right back. And thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. Garrett Berquist will be back with the legislature this week. We'll also be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network over at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.